I talk a lot on here about following your intuition and doing things that align with like your gut calling and your purpose. But what does that actually mean? What does that actually feel like? If you're someone who is trying to learn to listen to your intuition, how can you start doing that? So I'm going to break that down a little bit, because sometimes I feel like when I just say, follow your intuition, do what you feel called to do, that can kind of be like kind of vague. And, if you're trying to do that, where do you even start? So I'm going to go through that today. But first off, just a quick introduction. I am Julia. This is Tea Time with Julia. I have a tension tamer tea today. And I hope you have something to drink to follow along, even notes if you want to take notes with a pen and paper. But I am also going to list a little bit of my experiences, but not like, this is just sort of what I have experienced. And also, when listening to my intuition, there have been times where I knew I should have been listening, and I was just like, you know what? No, like no, that's not right. That can't be right. And it was right. Sure enough, it was right. And yeah, I will tell you a little bit about my experiences listening to my intuition, not listening to my intuition, holding myself back because I was afraid. And first off, I will start by saying that your intuition is a calming, assuring, and quiet voice. It's not fear-based, because sometimes our fears can also be quiet, but your fear is something that makes you anxious and worried. Your fears are telling you that you are not good enough for something, or that's not going to work out. Your intuition is not telling you that. Your intuition is more so based in, it can be like little words that you hear, but your fear is not based in fact. Your intuition more so is. Your fear is just telling you the things that are going to hold you back from doing what you really want to do. And sometimes listening to your intuition, it can be a little bit scary, because if you are in a situation where you are following your intuition, you're aligned with what you're doing, but you are also the first person around you to do what you're doing, that can be a little bit scary. And it's normal to feel that fear in that sense, but that is fear. Again, that's not your intuition talking. And your intuition will, like I said, it could be little words, it could be little phrases. My first instance of listening to my intuition and actually following it. So I feel like we all have an intuition. We can decide whether or not to follow it. And up until a few years ago, I didn't really listen to my intuition. I didn't really listen to that gut feeling, even though I knew it was right. So a few years ago, I was cleaning my room. I was just focusing on what I was doing. And then I sat down on my bed, and my brain clicked onto the movie in the living room. And it didn't sound familiar. I didn't really know what it was. And I knew I hadn't seen it before. But I kept hearing the words Selena, Selena, Selena in my head. It was just that. And it was calming. It was just that word over and over again. There wasn't any emotional like worry or anything from that, again, because that would have been my fear. That was just my intuition telling me that it was just saying Selena over and over again. And I went out to the living room to see what movie it was on, and it was Selena. I have not seen that movie before. No disrespect. I'm just not like a biopic person. But it was that movie, and that was what my intuition was telling me. And that was, again, the first time that I truly listened to my intuition. And after that, I was like, okay, it was easier for me to determine what was my intuition and what was my fear. And that was a point where I was just like, okay, this was my intuition talking. This was my gut. Like, I knew this was right, and I followed it. And it just made it easier to follow that time and time again. And when you are following your intuition, there is less of that feeling of, I should have done that, or I knew I shouldn't have done that, or I shouldn't be doing that. There's less of that feeling. There's less saying that to yourself, because you are following your intuition. Maybe not the first time, but like I said, as you follow it more and more, it becomes you're just following it the first time. You're just doing what you feel like doing the very first time. And your intuition, that like inner knowing, which is also, that is how you feel aligned when you are listening to that inner voice and that inner calling inside of you, and you just feel at peace with what you're doing and you're confident in what you're doing. It will, I just lost what I was going to say because I'm focused on this little bubble in my throat. But when you are aligned, it is, like I said, a peaceful feeling. Oh my goodness, I cannot remember what I was going to say, but that's okay. I'm just going to keep going through my notes. And sometimes it just came to me, it just hit me. Sometimes it will keep calling you over weeks, over months, even years. I remember there were things that I wanted to do maybe 6-8 months ago that I was like, I couldn't do that for whatever reason. Like the fear was talking to me, even though I knew I had that calling. I knew I wanted to do that thing. And even over the years growing up, like I knew I was called to do something for some reason, but I had ignored it. And that was sort of like making a YouTube channel, coming on here and describing and like sharing my experiences. I've always sort of been called to do that, but I was like, you know what if people see me on YouTube? Well, that is also the thing. Like, people are supposed to see you on YouTube. Like, that is kind of the goal, to like reach people. But I was so afraid of that, and I let that get to me again year after year, and that calling kept coming back. And it wasn't until like last December or November that I really like answered that call. So that is when you know that you should be doing something. And when you are answering that call, that is when you are staying aligned. When you are listening to your intuition, that is when you are aligned with your purpose, or whatever decision it is, whatever situation you're in. Like, maybe, like I said, it is a situation where you are hearing the same word over and over again, just sort of like almost as practice. It could be a situation like that where I said like that movie was on TV, sort of practice for me to start listening to my intuition. And like, no matter what, when you're listening to your intuition, when you're listening to what feels right to you, despite what other people feel, you're going to be aligned. Because like I said, you could be the first person to do something, and that could be scary to other people. But that doesn't mean that you should be listening to that. You should instead be listening to your intuition, making those plans, taking those actions in order to do the things you want to do, in order to bring your dreams into reality, in order to stay aligned. So you're taking those inspired actions to do what you feel right to do. And again, that doesn't mean that you're not scared. You can be aligned and still be a little bit worried because you haven't done that before, or that no one around you has done that before. That is normal to feel. You can still be a little bit scared, and that's okay, but you're not listening to those fears. You are listening to that inner knowing, that, reassuring, confident feeling that you are doing what's right for you. And yeah, I find when I am aligned that things just naturally work out for me. Money always finds me. Like, there aren't any worries that I have, because I am following what I feel called to do, and I am being the person that I feel called to be in that day, in that moment, in that hour. Sometimes it is just like taking it hour by hour and, doing what feels right to you. If you feel called to rest one day, to like go outside for a few hours, then do that. There's a reason you are being called to do that. And just follow that intuition, whether or not that makes logical sense to you. Like I said, if you need to spend a few hours outside, that is okay. It doesn't need to have a logical meaning or to make sense, because you might feel like if you were spending a few hours outside, you're spending a few hours away from working or doing whatever else, or like cleaning the house or doing your laundry. But maybe you might need to be outside for a few hours because the universe needs to tell you something, and you need to learn something by being outside. So listening to your intuition. Before I did this and I was practicing, I could not say listening to your intuition. But listening to your intuition is a calming feeling. It's assuring, it's confident, it's quiet. It is not fear-based. Even though you might be scared, you are not giving into those fears. And when you are listening to your intuition, that is what is going to align you on your path. So I hope that was helpful. I hope that was a little bit reassuring and less confusing than hearing me say listen to your intuition all the time and not know what that means. But yeah, I hope that was helpful. If you feel called, give it a like, subscribe. This is what I'm all about here, guiding others in their authenticity by giving you my experiences and stuff like that. But yeah, that was it for today. That was all I felt called to talk about. And I hope I see you in the next one. Bye for now.